What is up, everybody? What is up? Welcome, guys, to a very interesting show. Tonight, we are vaping, among other things. We are talking about Death Stranding. Guys, tonight we are talking about the review of Death Stranding. Normally, we put out some edited content. We tell you about should you buy it. But because this game has been so controversial and so impactful on the gaming industry, as you guys may have seen the nominations for Game Awards, today we could not do anything else but talk about Death Stranding, Kojima, how the game came to be, what our thoughts are from the beginning, the middle, and to where we are today. And we have a very special guest joining us today to talk about Death Stranding. We have Mr. Your Player 2 himself. I actually think he went to the courts and changed his middle name to Sam Bridges. So now he's first name Sam Bridges, last name. It's fantastic. Yeah. And I heard they allowed it. It's crazy.
Yeah, they were cool with it. They were like, he's got a weird look in his eye. Like, this dude really likes Norman Reedus. So, they let me get away with it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you like the first thing he told me was like, I told him that they have to deliver my ID in a package, and they said okay. So I was like, hey, you could pay them to do anything.
I had very stringent requirements. I'm just go on. I don't want to like jump into this too early and just start dominating the conversation.
And on the flip side, Mr. Monopulse himself, the narrator himself, bringing us. I know that this man's excited to talk about Kojima tonight.
Kojima 2019. That's all I got to say about that. Yeah, no, Death Stranding's been a fantastic experience. I'm excited to talk about it. It's a great game. And I got nothing but positivity to say about it amongst much criticism.
Well, with that being said, and we also have Cynthia joining me today.
Yes.
So all four of us have played Death Stranding, and the goal prior to us coming and just kind of like spewing our thoughts, good and bad, positive and negative about the game, was that we all at a minimum would play 20 hours of the game. I'm pleased to say that I ended up at 29 hours logged into the game, so I think I have a pretty good amount to say. I know Mr. Your Player 2 is just maybe an hour or two shy over that, right? So,
a little bit. I'm
a smidge.
I'm at least I think I'm 65 hours, maybe a little bit more. Like, I'm real into it. It's basically been dominating all my game time, and it kind of sucks because like I do want to play Pokemon, I do want to play Fallen Order in a big way. So at this point, like, I've spent so much time, like I'm content to stay in that world, but then I'm also kind of rushing a little bit. I'm skipping some. I'm not skipping story cutscenes, but like the egregious cutscenes. Like, I don't need to see that monster drink so many times. I skip through those now.
I mean, that's
but
cool.
I've been skipping those for a while too.
Right.
And with that being said, too, chat, if you guys want to chime in at all, if you guys have any opinions or questions, definitely put in the chat. We do realize that not everybody has given the game a chance just because of basically the internet telling people whether or not they should play it. So if you guys have anything you want to know about the game while we are chatting about it, please go ahead and put those questions and or comments in chat so we can discuss them on tonight's episode as well. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Mr. Monopulse, you are taking us through a journey, which is Death Stranding, and where are we starting with this beautiful journey, my friend?
Well, it starts really with one man, and usually on the rewind, we kind of get a piece together a small history of like where the game or the system or whatever comes from. There's always a road to greatness, and the story is no different here for Death Stranding, which was created by a production company, but was the brainchild of an individual named Hideo Kojima. Kojima is probably most notable for his work with, or most remembered for his work with, of course, Konami, until fairly recently when there was a split and he divided off in recent years to his production company, I guess I should say, has actually been around since 2005 and had worked on projects under Konami, but it's been most recently where they've become their own sort of independent production company, parting ways with Konami. Now, the thing is like you may or may not realize actually how far his history goes back. If you guys remember, the original Metal Gear was created in 1987, the year of my birth. So Metal Gear has actually been around longer than maybe we quite realize. Of course, that was originally released for the MSX2. It kind of laid the foundation for stealth games in general. Now, in 1998, Metal Gear, of course, was released for Sony PlayStation, and that's where the franchise really kind of kicked off. We saw iterations on the PlayStation 2 as well with Metal Gear Solid 2, of course, Snake Eater, and then on to 4 and 5. And actually, Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, was done under Kojima Productions. They were a subsidiary of Konami at the time. Of course, this all led to the point where they parted ways, and he was kind of like, Sony was like, here, take my money, make something delicious. And that's what got us to the year of 2019 with the release of Death Stranding. And not without its ups and downs along the way. I mean, the tiny little morsels that were kind of dropped here and there left everybody scratching their hairs going, what in the actual hell is this game? Mm-hmm. And then eventually I think everybody kind of figured out, okay, it's a walking delivery simulator. And then people suddenly realized, like, wait, it's actually just a walking delivery simulator. I thought there'd be more to it than that. And then, of course, it's been released, and some people have been like, what is this? I can't believe it's only been this. Some people have been like, I can't believe I've been missing this for my life. So whatever it is, the initial first impressions from those morsels being dropped, or trailers being released, or even to having it at day one in your hand, has been divisive, to say the least. Josh, I want to start off with you. Along the way, before the game was even released, how were you feeling? I mean, you've been a fairly vocal proponent along the way. Right. When did the magic grab you?
So, and that's the thing. I should point out, like, even though, like, I've been a big fan historically of Kojima's games, except for the ones, like you said, like his first, MSX title dropped in like 87. I would have been like 3 years old. Yeah, so, I can't sit here and be like, well, if you look at his early work, I wasn't really familiar with it. And I certainly wouldn't have experienced that till later in life. But when it came to Death Stranding, you got to think I was coming off a great deal of disappointment, right? Because Konami had been circling the drain as far as I was concerned as a publisher. Because, that was a name that when you saw that scroll across the screen in like the old days, like on the Super NES, for example, you knew you were about to get a quality experience, right? That was a name that you just, was synonymous with quality. And then, it's like you could feel a disturbance of the forest, or at least I did, whenever Silent Hills got announced, because I was like, you got Guillermo del Toro, Hideo Kojima, and Norman Reedus here. I was like, this feels too good to be true, and that's exactly what ended up happening. So, not only did Konami kind of do Kojima dirty by stripping his name off of everything and basically trying to gloss over the fact they were essentially firing him. So all of this stuff happens. You lose Silent Hills, which is one of my favorite series of all time. And clearly, that Metal Gear, in his absence, is going to take a huge dip in quality, as it predictably did. So knowing that he was going to be out on his own, I'd been as confused, I think, as everybody because we'd known about this since about 2016, right? We had seen clips of Death Stranding of Norman Reedus, and nobody knew what it was about. And it was really hard to kind of put together what was even happening, from a narrative perspective, what the gameplay was going to be like, and I think, like you said, most people are like, okay, so this is just, are we just delivering packages? There's got to be more to it, right? And to be fair, and I'm not going to go into huge spoiler territory, there is more to it a little bit, but that is the bulk of it, is, you delivering packages. So as far as how I felt about it, leading up to its release, I was excited mainly on the Kojima merit alone. And what I mean by that is I'm not like such a rabid Kojima fanboy. I'm like, oh, he can do no wrong, right? I very rarely think a creative person can do no wrong whatsoever. But what I will say is, I was extremely hopeful, and I had a lot of optimism about it. And the reason I had a lot of optimism about it is this. For me, it was a cold, hard math type situation, right? When Kojima went out as a free agent, at this point, he's no longer sort of, stuck under Konami's rules and having to adhere to their structures and everything. As a free agent, he was instantly became like the most sought after creative in the entirety of the video game industry. And Sony would have been crazy not to snatch him up, because if they didn't, someone was going to get him. And they certainly didn't want to see that to Microsoft. Because I'm sure they would have been happy to have Kojima on their side, making an then exclusive game. So leading up to it, knowing that, Kojima was a free agent and that he was basically going to be given creative freedom to do whatever he wanted, along with a gigantor bag of money, which doesn't hurt things, I had a feeling we were going to get something that was at least quality, that it was at least going to be something that was very, very Kojima. which I was fine with because Kojima, he has a history of, like overstuffed narratives and everything, but it's also his work has been very purely, very unabashedly his own, right? He very insistent, very eccentric, very particular about what he wants in his games. And then I realized that, oh my God, he's going to be able to do this. It's going to have to be a new IP because he doesn't have access to Metal Gear anymore because that belongs to Konami. Like, what kind of bonkers thing is going to come tumbling out of this dude's head? And I think we got the answer in Death Stranding. I was initially skeptical, and then it came out, and I saw some early reviews. But one of the things that spoke to me most about those early reviews was the fact that he didn't embargo those reviews till release day. He was a whole week before the game came out. He was like, "Yeah, go ahead, talk about it." And maybe that was just brilliant guerrilla marketing on his part because he knew it was going to be incredibly divisive. But for me, anytime someone's going to let reviewers have it that early, and these reviewers, and it's not like they had only a week to form that opinion. Some of these reviewers had the game 6 weeks in advance, like they were playing for a month. So to me, that shows a great deal of confidence in your product. And when I knew that was the case, I was like, all right, we're in for a wild ride right now. This is going to be a good thing.
I think you're right. And I think it's a really, really good example of what happens when you give somebody who is such a highly creative type completely free reign to create a product that is wholly his without the confines of a publisher. Dom, Cynthia, what about you? What was your roadmap like along the way? What was your experience as we closed in on the Stranding death?
I'll let Dom start first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we first found out about it Game Awards, I think 2017, which was shortly after Kojima had parted ways. From the moment I saw baby Norman holding the baby child when he's during the first BT attack, which is our first glimpse at the game.
I remember that with the guys walking over the bridge.
Yeah, prior to them, even officializing the engine that they were going to use for the game, which later on ended up being the Horizon Zero Dawn engine. From that moment, I was instantly, no matter what this game is, I'm going to play it. From me, I'm not a Kojima guy. I'm not a big Metal Gear guy. I've honestly only finished Metal Gear Solid, was it Three Snakes, the third one? Not Three Snakes, yeah. Snake Eater, yeah. I've only ever finished that game, and I like mostly only that game. The rest of them, I've dabbled in, but I never finished the rest of them just because I never had that interest. So my opinion of it doesn't necessarily go like, oh, I'm a Kojima fan, and I'm gonna play anything that he does. It was just this weird art piece style game that he was going to be putting out that just piqued my interest. So he had me from the moment that they showed the first thing. And along the way, I kind of felt like as we got to see more, my expectations started to kind of settle into what it was going to be, which is basically the game that we got. The only thing that did throw me off from his marketing prior, which was genius, I think, and I think by him not being part of Kojima, being allowed to do whatever he wanted, from a marketing perspective, I thought that was part of the genius too. But from that moment, the only thing that threw me off from their marketing was that he would tell people that they're playing the game already, which is the only thing that actually I felt didn't come to fruition. Because yes, you connect with players, which I'm sure we'll talk about how later on, but playing the game prior to it being released wasn't something that actually came into fruition, at least that I couldn't tell you guys how that happened, because from what I've played, there's nothing that prior to the game being released that you brought into it, which a lot of people thought, like, are we going to log into our Twitter and it's going to pull the last decade of tweets and it's going to change, we thought about all these crazy different things that we were going to get that just really never came. He was just basically messing with their heads to just be, again, a marketing genius so that your interest was piqued to want to play it. So,
I mean, as for me, I honestly don't know what captured me. I remember seeing the first trailer come out, and I was like, well, this is weird, but interesting. For me, the question was, why does he have a baby? I mean, really, I was
and like, you needed that answer, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a producer himself, I mean, I never really followed him personally.
I mean, really, same. I played 3 in the first Metal Gear, but that's about it.
I played one of the solid Metal Gears, but I don't remember which one. And I mean, it was so long ago. I think it was like on a cousin's console and whatnot, and they sucked at puzzles, so I would just help them occasionally. And I mean, I never really cared for Metal Gear Solid. I just knew it was just a big game. Yeah, to give me that face. It just wasn't one of my games like when I was a kid.
I really
Get
feel
outta
like
here.
3 is the best implementation of what that franchise has to offer, personally.
I
don't
did
know
go
if I ever got
back. I did go back later and play Twin Snakes on GameCube, and I really enjoyed it.
Whichever
But
one
I also,
had,
yeah.
I
like,
also never finished.
whichever
that
one
either.
had like the snowy area outside, I guess.
That would have been Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid, I think.
That's
Yeah.
the
I don't
one
know. I don't
played.
remember if Metal Gear Solid 2 had a snow area. I don't think it did, because that was on.
It's on the
Oh,
oil
I
rig.
never played the boat.
Right.
I saw
don't
that
think it
one.
did
I
either.
was like, there. I didn't even know there was a 2 or 3. I don't even
So
know
let me
what's
ask
in it.
you. Let me ask you this, Cynthia. You don't know when the magic happened. You knew he had a baby. You wanted to know why. Do you think that leading up to the game, do you think the game exceeded your expectations of what
Oh.
like your hype level was before?
Definitely, because I had no hype. Because I absolutely
There we
had
go.
no idea what it was. I was still interested in the game because, I mean, leading up to the game, I would tell you guys, yeah, I want to play this. I want to get my hands on it. Because something was like calling me. It's like, this is going to be your game. I didn't know what it was. What was like I
Is
said,
that
the
baby?
thing that clicked. I don't know if it was the baby. I mean, that was my first question, and I think I annoyed Dom a little while because I was like, what's this baby about? He's like, I don't know. It's like, stop asking. It's like, this is all they show. And I was like,
It's just equipment.
yeah, and I kept
Essentially, yeah.
I mean, he would always be on Twitter, always be looking up like
Yep.
new stuff, and I'm like, there has to be more information on this. What the hell is the baby? Like, why is it in that thing? Why is this little weird flashy thing going off? Why are these weird looking ghost dead people flying around? And why does what does the baby have to do with any of that?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of questions on the way up to it, and even really
Yeah.
that's first you boot the disc in, moving into transition to the next thing. You put the disc in, it kind of the first impression of it is it's a dystopian world,
yeah.
it's a sci-fi world, and honestly, even the storytelling and we'll bridge into the mechanics that come involved with that storytelling too. But the storytelling, I mean, at least for I'd say the first hour, maybe even up to 1 to 3 hours, you're kind of scratching your head
Yeah.
going, what the hell is this world about, really? I mean, we hear about the event known as the Death Stranding. We hear about the BTs.
beach.
We hear about the beach, which is obviously, I mean, I don't think this is very spoiler. It's just kind of conceptual. It's the afterlife. You have the Seam, which is like the bridge between the physical world and the afterlife. And we have the Death Stranding event, which kind of disturbed the natural order of things between the afterlife and the physical realm. Now, that's just a general thing of what's going on with the world. That's not, we're saving America. Death is all fucked up from the Death Stranding. Excuse my language.
I mean,
what
there's a lot of cursing in the game itself. I mean,
there is.
Yeah.
I mean, this game is nowhere near.
As the story started to unfold, how did you guys take in the world building, what's going on, and the angle the game is working? I mean, what was that like for you, Josh?
So as far as the story goes for Death Stranding, I'll say this, and this is going to sound really, I don't know, like paradoxical, given my elation with the title. The story, if taken at face value, I don't think it's that good for the main overarching story. What I think is far more interesting are the smaller stories that get told with the individual characters and their place within this world. Now, I'm not saying that it's completely like unwatchable or it's bad or anything. It's just I feel like a lot of the same themes kind of keep getting hammered on, like even dozens of hours into the game, they're not really saying anything new about the larger events. I mean, you're seeing like how it affected individual characters and the role that they played in how those events have come to fruition. But again, I speak as someone who hasn't finished the game yet, so I may be speaking just slightly out of turn there. But as far as the world building itself, it's a densely packed narrative, and they throw a whole lot of information at you in a very short amount of time. Like most of the stuff you mentioned really rolls at you in the first like 2 hours of the game as you're trying to piece together everything. You're like, Death Stranding, Void Outs, Repatriates, what are you talking about? Like there's so much weird verbiage, and I mean you just about need a dictionary to play the game in some parts. Like aphanphosmphobia, which
a codictionary.
Your favorite one.
Yeah, you need.
Right, you need a codictionary.
I agree with you with the story stuff, but I think it's just specific character arcs, like the main, like Dead Man, right? Like when they have like specific scenes surrounded him, I necessarily become a little disinterested. But flip side, part of the main story is fragile. I'm at my peak interested level when she becomes involved. Like I just been wanting to know more from the moment she was introduced, and like, well, why does she get to where she's at? How did she get here? How is her body messed up under her armor? Like, I just wanted all of these answers.
Right.
She fell in a time fall.
I know, but at one point I know, and again, I'm at episode, I think I'm wrapping up episode 3. If not, I just went into 4. But I'm assuming at some point there's going to be a flashback that says, here's how it happened. And if there's not, there's not. But maybe she just gives you the story, like the specifics,
Oh, Josh,
right?
his face. He's
So-
probably be like, nah.
I mean, if there is, there is. If there
is.
is, but anyway, I think there's just specific story elements that involve certain characters, and that's what really interests me. So I feel like that's my reward, just after all of these ungodly amount of deliveries that I do. I think that's kind of the reward, is when I get to that next thing, the story that I'm given back, and then on top of it, like what you said, the stories that I get as I deliver to the engineer or whatever, and I get that story arc on how he got there. I deliver to the old man that needed medicine, right, and how he got sick and how he relies. Like, those little stories I really enjoy, and I like the way that they I like the way that they do it. I like the way that they do it, and it's really, I've really become extremely interested.
Well, the other thing that I'll say is, like, structurally speaking, like, if you made, like, a direct comparison, you were like, Death Stranding's a film, it doesn't really work, because the pacing would be nightmarish. But what I really like is that each chapter is basically just, like, tied to one of those characters, right? It has a very specific, like...
Almost like a book.
It's similar to a book, I would say. But, you know, like, kind of seeing each chapter be sort of dedicated to one person's story within the world, to me, is more interesting than the world itself. I feel like you get the... And maybe I'm wrong, but at least to this point, and I'm on about chapter 7 right now, it feels like, you know, the big narrative of the world hasn't changed much. Cataclysmic event, people are disconnected, gotta reconnect them. And I feel like they just keep hitting those 3 points, like, over and over and over.
It's because, really, honestly, part of the story is it's the story taken at face value of the world within Death Stranding, but really the story is allegory for the modern world.
Right.
That's
and
what
I do
really
like
that's
the metaphors.
And that's
That
what that's the thing about it. Is I remember reading specifically in one of the interviews or one of the emails, somebody says the problem isn't scarcity. People have plenty. Not only do people have plenty, we're as disconnected from each other than we ever have been. And that's why the porters are so important, because they connect people. Now throw that in with everything you do being based off of a like system, which is a very sort of vanity system, and mix into how the only things that tie us together are biological needs, death, and time, the passage of time with Timefall. And basically the world of Death Stranding, while is its own like sort of sci-fi world, is really just a mirror of kind of where we are with social media, how we are in the first world. Having plenty but disconnected. And so the story is there, but the story is actually also, and that's why the whole message, the overarching, is reconnecting people, reconnecting America. This is a world still worth saving, and the thing that makes it worth saving is connections to others. And that's really like the sort of message, even without seeing how the narrative within the story resolves within itself. I mean, that's kind of the takeaway for me, is like the allegory for the modern world. I would find is very cool.
Yeah.
Right, and I would agree with that. Like the face value story. Like, if you just look at it and you try to be like, oh, it's like watching Independence Day or some summer blockbuster. Like, that isn't as interesting to me as like the themes that the narrative represents. Or and people have said like his characters are like, they don't even speak in a way that is very natural. Sometimes they're just like mouthpieces for metaphors, which is kind of true. I think. But like, you know, and for me, one of those themes that I found, like, I mean, it's obviously you can make references to like you know, the gig economy, or like you said, like social media, and our obsession with like likes and metrics and everything. But one of the things that I love the most, I think I already mentioned this maybe on the Luke cast before, I can't remember, but one of the things, this is a very light spoiler, it happens in the first hour, so it's a gameplay mechanic light spoiler, I guess. But Sam wakes up and freaks out because he's got handcuffs on, right? And they have to explain to him, like, oh no, they're not handcuffs, these are your cufflinks. It's basically like a PDA, it's like your data connection, but they look exactly like handcuffs. And he wakes up and he's got it, you know, on his wrist, and he's basically handcuffed to the bed, or I'm assuming for some data transfer reason or something. And then he easily unlocks it and latches both of them to his wrist at the same time. And at first when I saw that, I was like, that's so stupid. I was like, that's just heavy-handed and dumb. Like, okay, I get it. We're chaining the data, but nobody would literally handcuff themselves to data. And then I realized, like, and it took me a second for it to say, like, every morning I wake up and I put this thing on, like, the first thing. And I was like, oh, I hate this so much. It's so super smart. And then I felt like, just a hypocrite. So.
Oh man.
And I think what's really awesome too is Sam's reaction in the game as well, needing to have that cufflink always be on to be able to be quote unquote linked with the chiral network. And he's just like,
Right.
he huffed and puffed at it, but yet he now uses it to chain himself to the bed sometimes because he might have bad dreamy dreams, which I thought was also pretty I thought that was a pretty hilarious nod at how his comfortableness also increases throughout your duration of the play.
Right. And I'll spoil one dictionary word for you. That aphosmophobia we keep talking about. The light spoiler for Sam. He has this, and aphosmophobia, if you're not familiar, means that you are deathly afraid of being touched. You don't like hugs. You don't like handshakes. You don't like being touched at all. Right. And I think that's really interesting for his character in particular because he is either willingly or had thrust upon him the responsibility of reconnecting America. And it's weird because even when he makes deliveries, he very rarely sees somebody in person. It's almost always a hologram who's just like, hey, thanks for bringing me that pizza. Or, hey, I'm not joking. Or thanks for bringing me that underwear. I really appreciate it. But he has very few literal in-person connections. And yet, despite the fact that he physically does not want them and is in fact repulsed by them, he has chosen a profession that forces him to constantly be in connection with people and, interacting with them and forging relationships. I think that's really interesting. I like the dichotomy there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Mechanic-wise, of course, we're delivering, like you said, delivering pizzas, traversing hostile environments, with things like the passage of time being distilled in the form of timefall or rainfall in a heavily eroding fashion. Of course, you got the BTs, which are the manifestation of which appear to be the disembodied dead, as they don't have a place in heaven or hell or the earth. So here they are. We have things like void outs, which occur when coming in contact with these creatures. Cynthia, I want to ask you because I actually specifically watched your stream after I played the game at the very beginning, the first night, and I was super tense. You were going to at the very beginning, the windmill. You came back and you were getting dragged into the void out or whatever, and there's like whales bouncing around and like BTs dragging you in. For me personally, and I want to ask the rest of the panel as well, but directed to Cynthia, the game in the very beginning was so freaking tense, so anxiety ridden. Now it's like a little bit more blasé, like, oh, there's a BT, I'm going to blast you with my piss. But before that, it was like, before that, it was literally like, as far as like the physics of delivery, as far as the mechanics of the system, how have you, because you've been playing like a madman, what do you think shines? And do you think it's gotten easier? Do you think it's still riveting with what you played? What's your take on it?
So I'm just going to say I wish I've played more of the game than I actually have at this point. And that's only because Dom has put certain blocks on me and has prevented me from furthering my story arc. Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So blame him for the spot I'm at right now. When I first started playing the game, I mean, it, like I said, it captured me almost immediately off the bat. After my first stream, I definitely had more questions than what I did starting. I mean, it had to do with the BTs, right? With my first encounter, I don't think it was at the wind farm. I think I encountered it again at the wind farm. It wasn't the first.
It wasn't your first, but that's where I tuned in, and that's where I saw you like.
Oh my
getting
god!
Getting hectic.
I don't think I had my grenades yet, and so
I don't think so.
I had no idea how to kill these things. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. And so all I thought about was just hauling my ass out of there, because I had no idea what to do. It was definitely very stressful, but also like extremely pleasing in a sense. Because I was like, holy crap, you pretty much get thrown in this immediately. And you just kind of just gotta like figure it out. And I love that. I loved that they don't hold anything back from the very beginning as you're still trying to learn about what the hell the Death Stranding is, right? I'm still in the second area. Like I said, I've only played, I want to say more than 20 hours, but I got stuck, what was it, right after the lake crossing. And then I've played a little bit more. I don't know what it is, but I still don't know too much about the like concept, right?
Right.
Like being able to build and set your own Cairo network for other people to use. I don't know if I'm jumping here at this point. Is another thing that I still want to learn and build on, right? I remember like the last time I logged in, I got over like, I think it was almost 20,000 likes on my one bridge. And I was like, what the hell? Yeah. And like, cause like prior I had like, I think it was like 4 bridge links and it was taking me forever to get there. Cause like I was liking everybody's stuff and it was slowly growing. And then all of a sudden I jumped to like, I think almost 60 in like that 1-2 hour window. And I was like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just, I'm having a lot of fun. I've said this before as far as like, and I don't know why it surprises everybody, but this is for sure my game of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been, I don't know it's about it yet, like again, because I'm not as far as you, Josh. But I like taking my time. It's just one of these where I don't feel rushed. You really get to go at your own pace, and everybody's story is going to be different because, you know, you could be streamlining the main story and then coming back to do certain areas, you know, to build upon your relationships with these little, I guess, communities. I don't even know what to call them. But yeah, I mean, it's just phenomenal. I'm just having so much fun with it.
So I have 2 comments. First one is not necessarily about mechanics. It's just about great games in general. I have found myself this generation, and I'm talking about Xbox One, PlayStation 4. I'll throw the Switch, maybe Wii U, but mostly the Switch in there. My favorite games this generation have been the games that my character, whoever it is, in either the protagonist or a creative version of myself in the game, I have stopped at some point and I have looked and just gawked. I'll use the word gawked at a vista. And the best games, my favorite games this generation, are the ones I have done that in. And that is Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Persona 5, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, now Death Stranding, God of War, Spider-Man, where I've gone on the top of the Fist Tower or the Avengers Tower and just looked at the city. And now in Death Stranding, I have stopped so many times to look at a freaking rainbow or to look at the BTs that are far off in the world or to see a storm coming. And I have stopped and taken screenshots and pictures and clips. And it's just a trend that I've noticed. It's just generation of the best games that I've played have been the games that have made me stop in my tracks from whatever I'm doing within the game. Most recently, Pokemon Sword and Shield. I've stopped and just looked at the town I'm about to go into. I just went into the Ice Town today. I went to the Fairy Town the other day. I've just stopped and just looked at the vista. And that's just something I want to put out there. Is that I feel like the best games this generation, I can kind of correlate to that one minute event. And my only thing is I wish that there was a better camera mode in Death Stranding that allowed me to do funny faces and poses.
Where is photo mode?
Exactly.
What is happening?
That's the only thing missing.
The sync has some photo mode, but that's about it.
Yeah. The sync when you're in the when you're in Sam's pod.
Yeah, but where's the me being able to do like some funny face in the middle between while a BT's right behind me, or,
right.
You the L button, dumbass. I mean, so when you go to
but that's like a first person mode. That's not
I'm pretty sure you can switch it around because it's the same button you use to go soothe your BB. Yeah. Because it shows the damn photo mode.
Not true.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. You're probably going to go in there later tonight and fuck with it.
I am. But I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I mean,
Good
I'm
call.
second guessing myself as I'm nodding
because,
no.
like, 'cause when I push that button, it literally has like a giant square, and it looks like it's.
But can you see your is it selfie mode?
Yes, I'm pretty sure there's another button that says probably like portrait mode.
Like, why do I have
Yeah.
perfect camera mode in Dragon Quest Builders 2, but not in Death Stranding, one of the most gorgeous games I've ever seen?
Yeah, this is
It's a
fine. And
travesty.
I'm just surprised that that's missing because of that. But secondarily, so we're talking about mechanics.
Mhm.
I really do feel like again, I'm basically like I'm scratching on the door of 30 hours on this game, and from hour 1 to hour 30. I'm a grade S plus delivery man now. Period. The end. I started at an F, which stands for fumble, because that's all I did was fumble everywhere. And now I am S class, which stands for Sam Bridges class. Like I'm
That's all
up
he's
there.
doing all day.
I'm up
Yeah.
there now, and I thought that was cool. Is how you learn the mechanics of the game, how you are able. It really is a sandbox, like they usually say with open world games. It really is a sandbox that you can play around with. And as you play with different ladders, ropes, different things everywhere, you become naturally better at the game. Even just leveling out your 250 kilograms or whatever the heck you're carrying of just cargo on you as you're
7
trying to
tons in your truck.
balance it
Right.
as you're crossing a lake that is way too deep. And if you fall in, like, you better kiss that cargo goodbye kind of thing. So
No joke.
I found that super interesting, fascinating on how good you can become at the mechanics within the game, and
Right.
I really felt like I definitely am at that top tier class now, and I find myself doing more deliveries because of it, skipping a lot of the dialogue, but doing a lot more deliveries now.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I really like is the game, like, to Cynthia's point earlier, I guess, like, the world doesn't get less harsh. In fact, I would say it gets more harsh as time goes on, but you just become so more adaptable. And the reason that happens is because this game has no problem dropping system after system after system on you. And then when you start layering them all together, it's just like this complicated jungle of things to keep track of and manage. Like okay, you have to manage like how much weight you can actually carry. Okay, but then you have to think about your center of gravity, and then you have to think about how the extra weight impacts the battery life on a vehicle you might find, or how long you can walk before your boots start to get torn to shreds, or if you're willing to take tumbles and jeopardize busting up fragile cargo that has to not be damaged a certain percentage, but you're also in the middle of a bunch of BTs and you have to get away for your own safety. Like, there's just, I don't think I've ever seen a game layer so many different things to keep track of in such a short amount of time, but it all clicks and it all makes sense. They all logically build on each other, which I think is really great.
So Josh, then, yeah, to expand upon that, is it just a delivery simulator?
No, it's weird because like everyone's like, "Oh, that's just a walking simulator," and I've heard again Tim Rogers in his review jokingly say it's the Gran Turismo of walking simulators, which I think is accurate. But it's so much more than just a walking simulator. Like, when I think some walking simulator, I think you take in some scenery, maybe you have one or two interactable elements that's like a simple button press. But this is like your triggers are hands. Like, you have to figure out, like, yeah, if you want to load up your backpack and you got two things that won't fit on there, you got to keep holding the triggers to hold them like an idiot and hope that you can keep holding the triggers long enough to walk somewhere.
Well, at least you still have your thumb for the buttons. That's what I've been doing.
Right. I mean, it's just a cornucopia of monstrously intricate systems to keep track of, and yet somehow it's incredibly satisfying every time you make that delivery. Like, I don't think I've ever experienced the joy and relief in a game like I have after making it, like, through a timefall storm into like a patch of BTs, then almost drowning because I got in too much of a rush and thought I could just run through this little river, and then I end up floating down and losing half my cargo. Just finding a delivery terminal feels so good every time for me in this game. It's tedious, and people are like, "I heard the first part's boring." I got news for you, buddy. The first 20 hours are boring by traditional standards, but it's a special kind of boredom, right? It's the boredom you would get from like if you ever worked on a perler bead project, it's boring placing a bunch of little beads over and over for hours. When you finally iron it out, it comes together quite beautifully.
It's boring, like sipping a margarita on a beach house, watching the ocean come in and the little green glisten over the ocean is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your entire life. Yeah, it's boring like that. The first 20 hours are definitely boring like that.
Right.
So Brian had a question for Josh.
I'm sorry.
He wanted to ask, so is it not worth it for him to buy it in December, since all of the stuff that's being created now is not going to be as fun?
That is a very interesting question. Here are the two tips that I would give to anybody, and I keep going back to these. Two tips. One, if you think you might dig it, get into it now as quickly as you can. And the reason I say that is because there's a whole meta game associated with Death Stranding. If you go to the Death Stranding subreddit, you're going to see people there talking about it. But essentially right now, the way the game works is it's asymmetrically multiplayer. So what I mean by that is, if let's say that Cynthia and I are both on the same server, right? Let's say because you don't have like thousands of people on the same server, right? But let's say that she and I are on the same server. We will never see each other in person. But if I build a bridge that makes, that makes delivery to a certain destination easier, my bridge might appear in her world, and she can use it, leave likes, and then those likes get divvied out to me, not as currency, but rather as just like an attaboy sort of thing that increase your courier rating, which is really just an aesthetic thing, anyways. Well, no, that's not true. You get bonuses as you rank up, so I shouldn't say that. But what I will say is, tip number one: get into it as quickly as you can if you think you're going to dig it based on the things that you hear here, what you've seen in reviews, because right now there's like this beautiful metagame of discovery that's happening, right? It's almost like Breath of the Wild. When Breath of the Wild first came out and then someone first discovered, like, did you know, like, you can totally just like cook an apple raw and then it's edible, or hey, did you know that you can actually, like drop a beehive into a pack of enemies and watch them deal with that situation? Then everyone was like scramble to go try it. Same thing with Death Stranding. Like, everyone's just discovering things, and right now it's this big, hairy, untamed landscape at first, right? It really is. It's just nothing but rocks and horrible walking for hours. Like if you want to go deliver a package, it might take you 40 minutes to walk over there with like 200 pounds of gear, while your poor Sam has blistering winds in his face while he just struggles, and he talks about how his back hurts and how he wishes he could take a day off. Same way we would talk to ourselves if we were really irritated. And then, over time, everyone's ensured at least one hellish journey, because you don't get to see all the multiplayer stuff until you bring a chunk of the map onto the chiral network, which is their version of the web. It's a thing for delivering like 3D printing capabilities and information. It's like their version of the internet.
Yeah.
And until that happens, you never see, like, if Cynthia didn't bring a certain region online yet, she would never see the bridge that I built there until she does. So you're ensured to have at least a few rough times, so, because otherwise it would be really boring if you just walked in and it was like they're just Burger King franchises everywhere and everything's just this perfect city.
No.
And wait, and the second tip, the last thing I'll say is this: when you play, rush straight to chapter 3. Don't screw around too much doing side quests in 1 and 2, because you're gonna be like, this is really boring and it's hard and I don't know if I like this. And chapter 3, it cracks open like a piñata of goodies for you to play with.
So, all
right, I'm sorry.
The one thing I wanted to say to it versus playing now to later, okay? Because I mean, PC people already have to wait until summer of next year, right? Summer of 2020.
Right.
The thing now though is, since the game is still so new, everyone's, again, in Josh's statement, is still experimenting. We're all having a rough time trying to figure out what's the best route, what's the best way to make this delivery. Can I carry this here? Is this too important to take on me in this journey, or should I just leave this behind in my locker? Versus, if you were to wait later, the only difference is you might be put on a network where you're shared structures with somebody who's probably found the best route. It's not to say that you're going to have a bad time. You're just going to be able to experience the joy of utilizing, again, their structures, and it's going to make it so much easier. And then that gives you ideas of, maybe I can go back and do this in this area, and then what you build gets shared with everyone else as well. So I mean, it's a give and take kind of thing. But I honestly feel that it's not going to hurt, regardless if you wait. You just might have a little bit more experienced players, but like I said, it's not going to be a bad thing.
Another thing too, like sorry, Josh, like you said, timefall is an element that'll destroy structures. So, it's not necessarily that whatever is built today will be built tomorrow or forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Your structure, it does give you like a little bar saying your structure's at 96% durability. And then eventually, as timefall progresses, and that's, consider it like acid rain, right?
Acid rain.
As it progresses, your structure will be deleted. right?
Right.
And then so if you want people to continue using your bridge or, structure or whatever, just rebuild it, or somebody else will, right? I mean, nothing's bad in that sense, but it's a continuous recycle kind of thing. And I like that because it forces people to go back, whether it's helping each other or, if they want this route that they've been using for a while. I mean, can we repair our own structures? No, because eventually they just will, be broken down, right? Or
No,
do
you
we
can
not know
repair
that yet?
structures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if you don't keep track of your own structure or help somebody else's structures that you see, being demolished, I mean, yeah, eventually it'll just be erased.
Yeah.
Right. And something else I'll say about that to Cynthia's point, and this I'm not taking credit for this because this was something that Tim Rogers mentioned in a stream he did with Bennett Foddy from Getting Over It. So personally, I still think that, like, yes, being a part of like that, those initial pioneers that are sort of like resculpting the land to be more traversable, I think that's a very cool thing, and that's what I would prefer. But to Cynthia's point, it's not that the game will be easier for you necessarily if you wait 6 months. It'll just be harder for you in a different way. And what I mean by that is these early people, they can find a no-brainer place where a bridge should be because it's just so hard to get to a certain destination. And I think that's what happened to Cynthia, where she ranked up like 60,000 likes like it was nothing because she
Yeah.
just made a really smart play. On the flip side, your challenge as someone who comes in late to Death Stranding is lots of these people will have already built the structures where you would have done that. So your challenge will be trying to figure out ways to get additional likes in a landscape that has largely already been like kind of terraformed for parcel delivery. So you'll have a different sort of difficulty than the people who are just like, oh my God, I didn't pack enough boots and now I'm bleeding to death through my feet. Like, it's going to be different.
You're gonna
Not
So
worse
whether-
necessarily.
So whether you're putting in 20 hours by this point, 30 hours, 80 hours, I mean, there's something that you're going to take away, positive or negative. And that's to everybody who's considering playing the game and to those of us who play the game as well. Now, considering the amount of time we have left, which is about roughly 15 or so minutes, I'm going to kind of put these together, let everybody give their thoughts on it. If you had to, what's your highest praise of the title? What do you think it did best? And what's a personal criticism of what you think it could have done better? And ultimately, do you think it's worth the money in your wallet? Josh, I'll go ahead and start with you on this one.
What was the first part of that question? Again, you were asking me just
First part, personal praise and a personal criticism as well.
For me, I will say that this is a game into which I've been emotionally invested in a way that I haven't been in a while, and it's also very distinct because one of the biggest games I ever had an emotional investment in would have been The Last of Us. But I wasn't really invested in The Last of Us emotionally because of its mechanics. The mechanics were fairly par for the course, right? They were really well done and they were tight, and it was masterclass design for sure. But what did it for me was the story, right? It was a really tragic tale. And then it didn't end in like a nice, neat, sewn up way. It ended up with a very ambiguous sort of resolution that left a lot of people asking questions, and people still debate that game today, which I think is a hallmark of a great piece of art, period. But what's interesting about Death Stranding is I'm not so much emotionally invested in it because of all of the characters in the story the same way I was with The Last of Us, even though I do like a lot of the characters in Death Stranding. I've almost become emotionally invested in the mechanics itself, because not only is it really interesting to watch, which is sort of a classic tale, I guess, right? You got like a man or woman against the odds, right? Where it's just like one lone person who's given this insurmountable task with sparse resources, who gradually has to literally put one foot in front of the other in this case to try to get towards some sort of a resolution for the character and the world at large. But for me, the asymmetrical multiplayer piece of it has really reached out and touched me in a big way. And the reason I say that is this. One is there was an interview done with Kojima where he was talking about that specific mechanic. And one of the things he said, which I thought was beautiful because it's echoed not only in the game's narrative as a metaphor for what we see every day, but then directly within its mechanics, is he said that even though we are more connected than we've ever been, thanks to the advent of the web, right? Mm-hmm. That he still feels like there are a lot of people out there, specifically in the gaming community, who still feel very isolated. And one of the things that I thought was a very touching move that he made in the design of this game is there are no negative interactions with other players. We keep talking about likes being a sort of currency of sorts, right? Not too dissimilar to what we've seen, allegorically speaking, to Chris's point on the internet. But then I thought it was a really, really cool move of him to make dislike not an option, right? So there's no way you can go into this game if you're somebody who is feeling isolated and you're connecting with this game on an emotional level. You're never going to run across a bridge where someone left you a message like, this bridge is stupid. Why'd you build this here? No one's going to leave you like a thumbs down or anything like that. So that was a really tender kind of, design decision on Kojima's part. So yeah, now criticism, that's the thing. I don't believe there are any perfect games. I was joking, say there's no perfect game except for The Last of Us. Even that really wasn't perfect. I do have some light criticisms. One is you can skip those seemingly meaningless cutscenes, like where he drinks Monster and stuff and hangs out in like his little pod. But then you kind of don't want to, because as I'm sure you've discovered, Cynthia, or you will discover, you could miss something fun if you decide to skip it every time. So I'm always like torn between convenience and then want to see whatever bonkers thing's going to come out of Kojima's head. So that kind of sucks, because I feel like that's just padding. Two is the mission structure is sort of one note, and I think they could have done more with it. Like, yes, I understand our primary job is to connect things and deliver packages. And once or twice, it does stray from that formula, give you some slightly more interesting things to do. Like, sometimes it's not just deliver package, it's, hey, go get a package back from somebody that stole it, or go retrieve a lost thing and bring it back. But I feel like they could have dug a little bit deeper and done a little bit more with that. But those are fairly light criticisms. For me, the game is so mechanically, like just the mechanics themselves. Like if there were no characters to speak of and no story, and you were just like, you will get likes if you complete these 600 deliveries we've put in the game over this really unforgiving terrain, I would still love it. I really think I would. So, again, not a perfect game,
so
but still.
Praise and criticism. Does it earn the 60, or actually you bought the collector's edition, so it's much more than that. Did it earn every dollar you spend on it, and would you recommend it to a friend or your grandmother?
Grandmother, I don't know about that. It depends on what your grandmother's like. I would recommend it to my dad's a gamer, so I would try to get him into it, but probably still not his cup of tea. He's more of a like instant gratification gamer. I'm not really like. I mean, I feel like this game
you let
really
it slip. You let that slip there a little bit.
No, I just like I feel like gamers come down to into two stereotypical camps, and I don't feel like they need to. But I think people try to split them up that way, and that is like instant gratification games who are like, how come I can't shoot nothing? And then you've got people who are just like, well, this game doesn't give me any insight into the human condition. And I like both, right? Just because I love seeing a long, drawn-out narrative that has some Tarkovsky influence doesn't mean that I also don't appreciate just watching Duke Nukem be a complete slob and shoot people in the face.
Absolutely.
They're both great.
Absolutely.
So yes, worth the money, worth the collector's edition. I was a little iffy on the collector's edition, but then ultimately I was like, you know what? It can't be any worse than Fallout 76. I got that collector's edition. So I would say I paid out pretty well. So yeah, money well spent.
Josh, I'm so sorry. Dom, how about you? Give me a praise, give me a critique, and was it worth the money you spent in your household?
So my biggest praise of the game is honestly just the serenity of it, and it's how Kojima was able to produce a game that really does make walking, and there's different mechanics in the game. There's things that make you go fast. There's cars, there's trucks, there's bikes. There's different mechanics, but overall, he makes walking from one point to another point on a map, and really says that's all you do. But the way he makes it happen was just so genius in a way, by the different things that get thrown at you to making this trip to the different levels of which you have to kind of think on how you're going to get to some place, to how you may put a path down and your own path may lead you astray, to how you have to manage the weight on your cargo, to the boots from not trying to have bloody foot on the bottom, to making sure that you don't shake the baby enough to make sure that the baby's happy, to make sure that you hit recharge stations if you have the leg pieces or a vehicle, just the little pause you can put down for others and yourself to drop off additional weight if maybe you need to kind of get out of where you are, to the different enemy types that you can run into, that even though they are the same, from hour 4 to hour 24 to hour 30, those same enemies, because they're so frequent but infrequent at the same time, which is a hard thing to balance, that they don't get tired. I don't get tired out of them. So my biggest
Liar.
praise is just the serenity of it. And I'm not lying. I mean, like the BTs, although I
You
am not a
bitches
fan
about
of
it
them
all the time.
and I get annoyed, but there's not the ones I'm
Four of
talking.
them in 20 minutes.
There's not the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the actual like human enemies that you run into. But even the BTs that I get annoyed from, like I don't mind them anymore because of all the stuff I can collect from them. Now I do get annoyed when I come across 9 of them during a 1,200-meter trip. That's annoying. I'm like that shouldn't be happening. But then that leads me over into the thing I did not like was that I felt like this is a weird one. I felt like sometimes the BB was more of a hindrance, and I feel like that's a weird statement. When you run into BTs and stuff, you get that cutscene that just completely yeets your game. It just stops it. Whatever you're doing, you're done. No matter if you're on a bike going 100 miles or you're standing still, your game's yeeted across the board, and you get that cutscene that I hate that you can't skip. And then your BT comes there.
It's just a slow-mo one, right?
It drives me crazy. That drives me crazy, and you can't pass it. So when the BB gets overstressed, I get a little stress relieved, especially if I'm on a long trip, because I'm just like, I'm gonna whoop those BTs. Come at me. So if they show up, I'm gonna throw my blood at them. I'm gonna take a pee on them.
As he has like 50 like
Oh yeah,
blood bombs on
I
him.
carry that around in my extra cargo because I'm just like, yo, come at me. I dare you. So when the BB's not around, I actually kind of have a little bit of a better time. So if I'm facing my first BT, get stressed out. Shake the baby. It's fine. That way I can move on with my long, strenuous journey. So that's kind of my criticism of it. I think they could have changed up the way the BT spawns work. The fact that they spawn always at the same spots kind of annoy me. So you can kind of start to learn it, but the fact that tends to happen does kind of annoy me. And then the other thing is I want to play music more often, as I said in the past.
Yeah.
And that was a big annoyance of mine is although they are trying to set the mood, at hour 25, I don't need the mood set anymore. Let me set my own mood. But I also think that they hit a lot of their music tracks under different points that you hit in the game. And I don't like that either when games do that is let me experience all the music when I want to. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And then the absence of the camera mode that I don't believe is there, but I'll find out kind of annoyed me as well. So those are kind of my critiques of it.
So is it worth it?
With it being worth it, absolutely. But the thing is your expectations need to be set at exactly what this game is. And if the description of what we've talked about or just what it is from others is just not for you, that's okay. You don't need to go on the internet and say that you hate this game and you never played a minute of it. You don't need to be toxic. Just don't play it and move on. Just like people do when a version of League of Legends comes out, a game that tries to be the next Dota, and nobody on the internet talks about it because they're not into that genre. You don't need to either. If you don't like it, that's fine. Don't play it. Move on. If you are interested even a little bit, then absolutely. It is worth whatever Kojima wants to charge for it. It's a fantastic experience, and if you're a PlayStation 4 owner, you honestly need to play it because it'll probably blow you away. Again, if the expectations are right.
Cynthia, what's your take? I know you've delved in along with the rest of us. Criticism, praise, and should you buy it? Is it worth it?
So let me start with my praise. This game has done everything that I've asked for it. I've spent so much time. I wouldn't spend a lot of time raving about a game if I didn't like it, right? I mean, I can like Pokemon and get lost in it, right? I can get lost in Monster Hunter World and like it. I mean, or, and there's been other games where I've probably spent like a shit ton of time, but I don't fall in love with it like I have this one. Just an example, Overwatch. I've spent like so many hours in that game, but not get lost into it like this to where I'm like willing, and I don't get tired, right? Like in Overwatch, it's very tedious and things like that, where I'll still invest the time, but I didn't feel fulfilled at the end of the day. This, I can just get lost in a whole new world, and like I said, it feels right, and that's all it takes for me just to fall in love with the game. As far as what I don't like at this current moment, I would probably just have to say the BTs, not because they're difficult or anything. I love the adrenaline from the very beginning, like them scaring the shit out of me and
Sure.
not knowing what to
Me
do.
too.
It's just now at this point, it's almost too predictable, and too simple, to get rid of. Once they gave you like the number one thing where like it just wipes them out, you're like, okay,
Just wait till you get to the number 2 thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what chapter are you guys talking about.
I'm on chapter 7, I believe.
What chapter are you on, Chris?
Chapter 3.
Okay.
I will ask this to does it, because I saw you make a face there. I just want to know, is it? It doesn't. It's not the same old thing anymore, is it? Josh, you made a
About the
face.
whale? Yeah.
Are you talking about? Oh,
The BTs
no,
and whatnot.
So they changed.
no, it will not be the same
See,
thing.
we got something
Okay.
to look for.
So
You got some stuff to look forward to.
But I'm
Cool.
also in like over 20 hours. Now, mind
Mhm.
you, I made the mistake. I didn't just rush through to chapter 3 like Josh keeps mentioning. Don't waste your time. But that's what I constantly do. I just waste time. And if it didn't capture me the way it did, I'd probably be upset with myself, but I'm not. I'm okay at where I'm at with the time I invested and the resources I still don't have available to me. I don't feel like it was a waste. For me, it was what? Say it.
No, I was just gonna say, like, time you're enjoying yourself is never time wasted. Like, when
Yeah,
I should
agree.
modify what I said earlier. Like, when I say rush to chapter 3, what I mean is if you're feeling on the fence about it when you're in the middle of chapter 1 and 2, I'm saying hang in there and just beeline through the main to see what cracks open in chapter 3. If you're having a blast, like, because I was that way. You know,
was
I
too.
lost 20 or 30 hours in chapters 1 and 2. You know, it's not bad. I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
you know, if you're looking at 1 and 2 and you're like, well, I guess this is it. This is my life now, buddy. There's a bonkers toy box waiting for you just one chapter down the line.
Yeah, like I barely got my pants. Like that's all I got so far, and I'm assuming I'm still in chapter 2, or starting in 3. I'm not sure. But like it's just like I said, it's for me it's well worth it. If the BTs are to be changing, maybe my opinion will change later about it. It's just right now, they suck. I mean, like I said, that's where I feel my time is wasted. Literally, like when Dom will watch me play, I exhale. I'm like, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm just gonna let the dumbass just drag me away so I can hurry up and kill it, right?" And I'm like, "No point wasting my fucking time here. Like, I'll have a full back on." I was like, "Fuck it, just knock me over. Hurry up. Let me get this over with."
Mhm.
That's why I don't like them right now at the current moment, because they are so simple, but they're annoying in a sense where like you just have to stop and drop everything because it's more effort to try to like get away from them or sneak by them. Yeah, that is for me time wasted. It's like, you know what, let me just kill it so that way they just leave the area completely and I could just move freely without having to worry about being attacked again. Would I recommend this game to a friend and or my grandma? Friend, of course.
Yeah.
She actually has it right now and she's having an amazing time. Both of them are actually. My grandmother, hell no. She has no idea what the hell. I mean, she doesn't even speak English for one. But I mean, it's one of those, of course, like I feel like everyone has like the 50-50 of they know someone who will absolutely enjoy it, but at the same time they know someone who would absolutely hate it. And so yeah, I mean it's a weird question to propose. But it's nice to know that not everyone's gonna like it, and you just gotta know where you stand before you buy it. Because if you're already feeling on the fence, I mean, it just might be one of those games where you're okay to pass it up.
And
And
that,
we won't be mad at
I don't think that's a better way to put it.
So,
Honestly, that's put a bow on it. That is.
so Red had asked in the chat. So, what would you give it a rate? So, we don't do a rating system here.
Oh,
we just
10.
say, should you buy it or not?
Yes.
But if you had to, what would you, out of 10, what would you give it?
10. Absolutely.
Oof.
I mean,
She said game of the year.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean-
I'm not lying. It's, to me, I wouldn't have it any other way. now based on our rating, would you buy it or not? Yes, absolutely buy it. And again, that's still going back to my statement. Even if you're, about the game, just wait until it drops in price. It might not be, the right time for you to play now. Again, just depending on who you are, but it doesn't mean that you won't get some sort of enjoyment by playing this game, even if that's aesthetically speaking, right? This game is so well done as far as the graphics and pictures go. And I love, actually, that there's no constant music playing in the background when we're trekking on foot or on bike. And that there are just certain moments where you'll be, like, walking down the hill and, a soundtrack will start playing. It's like, oh, my God, like, I can just lose myself in that. It's not one where I have to worry about going into the settings and turning off the stupid music because I just get annoyed with it. I actually like it being quiet the majority of times, and like I said, it's well worth.
I do too, actually, Cynthia.
I really
Sorry, this Pokemon
like
soundtrack is trash. It's hot garbage.
False.
It is hot.
False.
Stinking,
I actually kind of liked it.
Asshole trash.
It's because you don't like bops. You want to trans out with some.
There is one track that is worth a damn on that game, and I think it was Nessa's Gym, and that was it.
Sorry, there's no hardcore metal in it, Christopher.
I don't even listen to metal. It's annoying. It's literally just annoying music.
Fantastic. There's bops.
The game's great.
You also didn't like Persona, and that's probably one of the best
I'm not into
soundtracks
soul
in video
music
games. So
no,
that's fine. That's fine. Did you also hate Mario Odyssey's soundtrack too?
I didn't play that.
Oh, well,
it's probably better though.
Go play that. Real quick, though, if I was to put a rating on it, I would give it a 9, just because I think that there are some things that could have been done a little quicker within the game. I think there are just like some little things like what I talked about earlier. So I would give it a 9, just because I think there is still room to kind of have improved some of the things that we've all kind of had the consensus of. So I would leave that at a 9 rating. But this has now moved to my number 4. No, in the top 4 games of the year. I think right now for me,
I thought you had it at 3 earlier.
You
literally said Fire Emblem.
I did.
Get out of here.
I'm going. But
Leave.
Pokemon has just taken over my life.
Yeah, you
so
said Fire Emblem, Pokemon, Death Stranding. That was. I'm pretty sure you fucking tweeted it.
Fire Emblem, Judgment, Death Stranding. That's what
Judgment was never part of that conversation.
Yes, it was.
No, it was not.
We weren't even at the Pokemon yet. Pokemon though,
guys,
fantastic.
Who votes them out?
I'm staying out of this. I'm in Sweden.
But Mr. Mono, what are your thoughts on the game? Positive, negative? Would you recommend it? What's the reading?
Positive. Okay, mine's short. Positive is I think that the narrative, while I will agree with Josh, I think pounding in the same elements over and over, like there's like 4 critical points they want you to understand, and it was very interesting at first, and about 20 hours into it, it was like connect, we're okay, internet, okay, I'll get you on the internet, okay, go here, okay, you're connected, awesome, we're brothers, it's great. It's just like we did it. I wanted to see more. The interviews, I don't know if you've gone through and read them, but the interviews are really cool for extra fluff. And that's kind of what I wanted to experience through questing, if that makes sense. But I'll read it too. I read data logs. I do all that thing. So the story was cool, but it was a little bit repetitive in some elements. But I'm always wanting to see where it goes. And that's what's good about a story-driven game. I always want to see where it goes. I don't mind the soundtrack being used sparingly. I think it adds an element of flair to those moments where it's there. A lot of the times the music in the game actually is very like somber. It's not really energetic or energy driven. So like it seems like in the moments that it happened, it was like I was looking for respite, and then they gave me a little bit of music and I was like very serene and very chill after like a hectic moment. So I thought that the use of music was actually really well done when it was done. Mechanically speaking, I think just piggybacking Josh's point, it's layered like a freaking what's layered? A 17 layer sandwich, a turducken. It's layered like a turducken. It is actually like the thing, and to piggyback Dom's point too. This game, what he was saying, he was like, from this, from that to the other. The game was so rigidly and well thought out, and I think that is what's so impressive. A mini scene here, the physics, or arranging stuff on your back and having to hold things in your hands, like every element of this game was considered, and I think that's what makes it so special. As far as criticism goes, I guess my major criticism would probably be that the side quests, while they do yield you some rewards, don't necessarily drive me in such a way that I feel compelled to do them.
So you don't care about the relationships with the
I
people
do.
for the side quests?
I do, but it's
You don't
the
feel
more I've
obligated.
done it, I don't feel obligated. I feel more compelled to see where the major story arc goes, and the small, like, howdy doody neighbor. There's just a lot of it, and I wish it was maybe a little bit less.
I only do a lot of them because of the potential items I may get. Some of them are really good for story. Some of them I just kind of yeet my way through the X button because I'm hoping I'm gonna get a hat.
And a lot of those backtrack you and stuff, so it's just like,
Yeah.
Or like Josh, you become a little seal or an otter.
Otter.
That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Hey, did you guys get it yet?
Not yet.
Oh
No.
boy.
I'm
You
telling
tell me
you.
as soon as you do.
Okay, wait. Let me rewrite mine. The one thing, what was it? The praise and then get better. Dom letting me fucking play. I kid you not. So yeah, I mean, there's been multiple times where, like, again,
Where what now?
So I mean, praise and then
Criticism?
Criticism.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I criticized Dom for not letting me play as much as I've wanted to. And
Aha.
there's been multiple times. I mean, how many Pokemon streams have we had now? How many?
Whoa! Why you gotta bring
That's like
Pokemon
9?
into this
I feel like-
conversation?
So-
Plus
I
mine,
keep
10.
checking for The Last of Us or Death Stranding, but all I get is Pokemon, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the reason why is because, mind you, he's been off for almost a week.
It's Pokemon
I've been
season.
working. Every time I get home and I'm thinking about Death Stranding, and I'm thinking about just wanting just to sit down and relax and just get myself lost in this game, and he's streaming. And there's been multiple comments where I've told him, I was like, you need to be able to set me up downstairs so that way when you're streaming I can just put the damn game in and fucking play. I can't do that if you're hogging up the TV that has my Death Stranding game on it. It drives me insane. It's been killing me.
Yeah, you're gonna have to use
Yeah.
physical violence to get that set up, which
Yeah.
we do condone. Finally, I would have to say on that point, Cynthia, I would buy it. I would recommend buying it if you are interested in complex games. And if I had to rate it, I'd probably have to throw it at like an 8.5. I'm gonna be a 0.5 guy, but I think it's worth that.
Oh, what? You said 8.5? Okay, so I mean that's what the Metacritic score is right now, I think, right? Like 8.3, 8.4.
That's about fair.
Or 8.
Yeah.
81, 83, something like that. I think.
Okay.
Give it an 8.5.
And I mean that's a fair. That's
No,
a
it
fair
isn't.
assessment.
Like I
No, it's
wouldn't
not
give it a
fair.
9. I wouldn't give it a 9 because of some of the criticism points I have, but I wouldn't give it an 8 because I feel like there's a lot of games that could land at a solid 8, like Outer Worlds. I feel like it's
Don't even bring that up in here. Like that doesn't even compare to this game. And I haven't even
no, but it's an 8. It's an 8 for me. It depends on what you're wanting from a game, but even Outer Worlds isn't my game of the year, and I'm not quite sure what is yet. But
Well,
I
it's
think
on the Game
Death
of the Year
Stranding-
nomination, so a lot
Yeah.
of people feel extra passionate about it.
No, I don't think it's Game of the Year material. I don't even liking the game. But I would struggle to say Death Stranding is the Game of the Year, but I do think it exceeds average for sure.
So
Right.
you
Game of the
rate top
generation.
5.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, you give it an 11,
So-
Josh. I got you.
I think the other reason too that it's stuck at a 9 is when you're in it, when you allow yourself to get in it, it's hard to tear yourself away from it unless like you have to, right? Like I gotta go get the kids, I gotta go to work. But I mean, like when you're in it and you don't have to go do anything else, like
Sleep. Yeah.
you just want to keep playing, and that's why it got the rating that I, if I had to give it a rating of 9, that's why I would give it, is because of that. Unlike games, which most recent, and the only reason I'm going to mention is not because you did, Chris, but just because I rolled credits on it recently. Unlike Outer Worlds, to where after about an hour of hitting, killing the same marauders, and there was no story stuff, I'm like, I don't feel like playing anymore. That's kind of why that one was on the lower of the totem. But when it Death Stranding, even I guess. Again, just the time that I spent in there, and they're completely different games. They're not the same at all. But just wanting to be invested in it, I felt like I had to tear myself away from it more than Outer Worlds, or even like Gears 5 most recently, to where I was like, oh, an hour, I'm good. I can go to bed now, kind of thing. So, that's kind of why I got that rating there.
I was gonna say, do it, Sam Bridges.
Yeah.
Right? A little air kick.
Yeah.
So, quote time to end the stream, Josh.
Quote time?
Get touched, 2019.
Oh, I don't even remember how I said that. We were
Yes,
joking before
yes.
the stream started.
You said, what's the actual?
I was like, it touched me,
abbreviation?
and what?
What does he actually have?
Everybody needs to be touched. and this
Everybody
is the
needs to
game
be
do it.
touched by Death Stranding.
Yeah.
In like a non-creepy, non-panel van involved way. It's something magical. It does something that I've never seen another game do, and that was make me fall so utterly in love with it, mechanically speaking. So if you like to punish yourself, you should check
I'm
out Death
glutton for
Stranding.
that.
I'm glad that Death Stranding touched you.
Me too.
And with that being
It was
said,
worth every penny I paid for it.
And with that being said, I hope all of you guys tonight were touched by your player 2 among the rest of us today. And we appreciate you guys coming in to this Death Stranding review discussion, the Gaming Rewind, on our channel, sometimes on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard. We'll be returning on another episode at another time with another game, with maybe even another guest, or the same one.